Hey folks, I'm Brendan, you're watching The Overqualified Henchman, and I like Spider-Man. I mean, of course I do. Unless you're a bank robber or a mustachioed newspaper publisher, everybody loves Spider-Man. And if you're a newspaper publisher, you've actually got bigger problems to worry about these days. Print is a dead medium, Jonah. Still, I think it's probably fair to say that I have stronger Spider-Man-related opinions than is, strictly speaking, typical. And because of that, I've amassed a fairly sizable spider army, and since I need to justify this sprawling doll collection to myself somehow, I thought I'd make a series of videos talking about some of my favorite spider and spider-adjacent people. Welcome to part 1 of the Overqualified Henchman's Guide to Spiders in Your Friendly Neighborhood. Now obviously there's only one place to start. The original, amazing, spectacular, sometimes other adjectives, Peter Parker, the Spider-Man of Earth 616. Now I'm not going to spend that much time on Pete because come on, you all know the drill. Nerdy kid, radioactive spider, Uncle Ben, power, responsibility. Now don't get me wrong, the old Parker luck's gotten him into some pretty bizarre situations over the years. There was a time he had 6 arms, the time he had an alien costume, the time he made an honest to Mephisto Faustian bargain, the time he was a high school science teacher. These days though, he's the head of Parker Industries, an international tech company that made its fortune selling webware, an affordable smartwatch. He's even pulling a Tony Stark by hiring Spider-Man to be his own bodyguard. Now, if starting up a successful company with his name on the side of the building seems unusually on the ball for Pete for you, well, there's a reason for that. See, he wasn't Peter Parker at the time. Dr. Octopus was dying, slowly, painfully. But he had one more trick up his many sleeves. He managed to switch minds with Peter Parker, leaving him in Spider-Man's healthy body and Spider-Man trapped in Octavius's dying body. He copied all of Peter's memories, and here comes the twist. See, Otto had always considered himself maybe not the hero of this story, but at least the wronged party. But now he got to see every hardship Peter had been through from Peter's perspective, like it had happened to him. He felt what it was like to find Uncle Ben dead. He felt what it was like to be Spider-Man. He realized that Spider-Man really was a hero he had just killed. And so, Otto Octavius vowed to make amends. He would carry on Peter Parker's legacy. The world would have a Spider-Man. The superior Spider-Man. Now this led into a whole storyline with Otto applying his ends justify the means philosophy to being a hero, all while pretending to be Peter Parker. This led to some interesting stuff and a really satisfying character arc for Otto, although if I have one complaint about the superior Spider-Man storyline, it's that it kinda required all of Spider-Man's allies to be sorta idiots for not figuring out that something was up with him. Still, it's definitely one of the most interesting status quo shakeups the character's ever seen, and worth checking out. Now, while there have been a few different people behind the mask of Spider-Man over the years, there have been no less than 4, depending on how you count it, different characters in the main continuity using the name Spider-Woman. The first and most recognizable is Jessica Drew. Now the story goes that Jess here was created when Marvel realized they needed to lock down the name Spider-Woman, and quick. And maybe that's part of why her backstory is complicated, even by comic standards. There's been a couple different retellings of this one, but the basic idea is that as a child, Jessica was dying, and her parents, scientists, used a spider serum to save her life. Now they disappeared, and she got mixed up with the High Evolutionary, and let's face it, anytime the High Evolutionary shows up, things get messy. Besides super strength and the ability to stick to walls, she was able to glide using the webs under her arms there, and she can fire bioelectric venom blasts. You know, like a spider. She also has pheromone powers, and how creepy and inappropriate these are varies from writer to writer, but they're pretty creepy and inappropriate. Then as a teenager, she was recruited by Hydra, who tried to indoctrinate her and get her to assassinate Nick Fury. Over the years, she lost and regained her powers more than once and spent some time as a private investigator before kind of fading into obscurity for a while. Then Brian Michael Bendis brought back the character in the way only Brian Michael Bendis can bring back a character, turning her into a triple agent who was working for Nick Fury, pretending to work for Hydra, pretending to work for S.H.I.E.L.D. If that wasn't confusing enough, it turned out she'd actually been replaced by the Queen of a shape-shifting alien invasion force. Not surprising then that by the time the real Jessica made it back to Earth, there were some trust issues. These days, she's got a new costume, which I really need a figure for, Hasbro, and she recently became a mother, in addition to being a mentor figure for a whole new generation of spider heroes. One of those proteges? Anya Corazon, currently going by Spider-Girl, although you might know her better by her original codename, Aranya. On her first day of high school, Anya got caught in the crossfire between 2 secret societies, the Spider Society and the Sisterhood of the Wasp. She was mortally wounded, and one of the Spider Society's mages, Miguel, turned her into a hunter to save her life. It's all sort of an Assassin's Creed meets Buffy the Vampire kind of thing. Go with it. Anya got the standard Spider package: speed, strength, sticking to walls, and the ability to grow a bright blue carapace. You know, like a spider. Now, if all the secret society stuff seems complicated, don't worry about it, because it later turned out her powers had nothing to do with the Spider Society, because comics. She then lost her powers during the original Civil War when her carapace was forcibly ripped from her body, because frankly, the original Civil War wet fart. Now, to Anya's credit, even without superpowers, she continued to be a superhero, which is pretty badass, and frequently teamed up with Nomad, who was Captain America's sidekick from... You know, we don't have time to get into that. Point being, she impressed Julia Carpenter, the second Spider-Woman, and also the second Madam Web. Julia was actually the first one to wear the white and black costume before Peter ripped off her look. People forget that. Anya continued to wear the black and white costume during Spider Island, an event where everybody in Manhattan got spider powers. Even when everybody else was cured and went back to normal, Anya kept the spider powers because... Sure, I mean, why start making sense now? As Spider-Girl, she's teamed up with Spider-Woman and Black Widow, among others, and become a respected hero in her own right. Now, I mentioned the black costume, don't worry, I'm not gonna leave you hanging. Let's talk Venom, specifically Flash Thompson. Now, when I say Venom, you probably think Eddie Brock, who, depending on how old you are, either looks like this in your head or like this. But Flash is such a great character. He was originally introduced as the bully at Peter's high school, the popular jock to Peter's nerd. He was the one shoving Peter into lockers, but he was also Spider-Man's #1 fan. Didn't matter what the Daily Bugle printed, didn't matter if the police were after him, Flash knew that Spider-Man was a hero, and he would fight you if you said otherwise. That is such a great setup. I'm really hoping Spider-Man Homecoming does something with that. But what's even better about Flash is where he went from there. As Flash got older, he matured and realized, looking back, that he'd been a real jerk. In an effort to make up for that and followed the example of his hero, Spider-Man, he joined the army. And he had a tough go of it. After his first tour, he struggled with alcoholism before cleaning up and becoming a phys ed teacher. During his second tour, he lost both of his legs in an act of heroism, saving his superior officer. Meanwhile, the Venom symbiote had gone through a couple of hosts before ending up in the hands of the military, who made Flash an offer. Enter Agent Venom. The symbiote was able to create temporary legs for Flash as long as he was wearing it, but controlling it was always a struggle, which fit really well with Flash's other struggles. Now eventually, he was chosen to be the Avengers, and by extension Earth's representative on the Guardians of the Galaxy, which makes sense when you remember he is wearing an alien after all. After some wacky shenanigans, they made their way to the homeworld of the symbiotes, and Flash got an upgrade. The other Clintar were able to heal the insanity of the Venom symbiote, and together with Flash, they became Venom Space Knight. He's a knight in space. What's not great about that? Now, it looks like Venom might be returning to a more traditional take in the near future, but this is hands down my favorite version of the character. Let's finish off part 1 with one of the more recent additions to the Spider family, Cindy Moon, aka Silk. Cindy was bitten by the same spider as Peter, although her powers are a little bit different. Notably, her spider sense is much stronger than Peter's, and she's able to create organic webbing, hence Silk. After getting her powers, she met Ezekiel, who... Okay, Ezekiel. Short version, Ezekiel's an old rich guy who got spider powers through magic rituals. He also introduced the idea that even though Peter's powers came from science, he was still a spider totem, and therefore part of this quasi-mystical food chain. That partly explained why so many of Peter's villains were also animal-themed. You know, Dr. Octopus, Rhino, Scorpion, the Lizard. Ah, and what's the natural predator of the spider? That's right, super buff Victorian vampires. Comics! We'll be talking more about Morlun later, but the important thing is that to keep him from finding Cindy, Ezekiel put her in a sealed bunker where she stayed for years. We're basically talking some Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt style stuff here. Eventually, Peter found out about Cindy and broke her out of the bunker, which led to more stuff that we're going to talk about later, and some more gross pheromone stuff that we're not going to talk about at all. Besides super heroic, she's also trying to find her missing family, adapt to life in the outside world, and more recently going undercover in Black Cat's criminal organization. It's always a little tough to tell when a new comic book character is going to get enough traction to stick around for the long term, but in Cindy's case, I think she deserves it. That's it for part 1. Next time, the Ultimate Universe and the Clone Saga. Draw me a comment down below letting me know who your favorite 616 Spider is, and while you're at it, remember to like, subscribe, and share. Until next time, remember that with great henching, there must also come great responsibility.